Good evening and welcome to the Roar Rally for America. My name is Greg Ireland, as he said. I'm publisher of Topeka Capital Journal, and I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. We hope it's fun, leaves you with a great feeling about America, as opposed to the news media, what we usually do. That was my one joke I got. Tonight's Roar for America rally is a creation of the Capital Journal's parent company, Morris Communications, and its new civics initiative called ROAR, Renaissance of American Responsibility. The purpose of ROAR, as you will hear momentarily, is simply to celebrate America and to remind ourselves of the unique responsibilities we have while living in the greatest nation in the world. We have a jammed-packed hour for you, and we'll try to keep it to an hour or just a touch over. But first, to lead off, will be Miss Kathy Ramshaw. She works at the Topeka Rescue Mission, who provides shelter for over 2,000 homeless men, women, and children annually. And they recognize there's a need to address preventions as it pertains to the systematic causes of homeless and not just build more and more missions. With that said, TRM launched an initiative called NetReach in an attempt to reduce homelessness and stabilize our most at-risk neighborhoods in Shawnee County. The first pilot site is based in Highcrest. This neighborhood was chosen for a long list of reasons, like 92% of the children live in poverty, the highest percentage of child in need care, and the highest percentage of children entering the foster care system. 62% of the families experience domestic violence, but it is the level of trauma experienced by the children and the parents that cannot be quantified or qualified that drives the NetReach staff to search for real solutions to stabilize the families. Catherine Ramshaw spent the first half of her professional life in the shoe business, first working for Payless Shoe Source, in the past 20 years for an import company in New York selling shoes to Payless. She and her husband Richard have raised 3 boys who are now 20, 18, and 15. It was 7 years ago that God set their family on a different course. A 3.5-year-old little girl was abandoned at their home. The short story is that Jesus carried her up to the front porch and said, "This is one of yours." We were her 5th family. Kayleen's story, her background, is a reflection of what many of the children in Highcrest are experiencing today. God brought me to Highcrest through my experience with Kaylin. If that is where they are making Kaylins, then that's where I am going. Catherine was part of the initial grassroots efforts that began in the park of Highcrest, reaching out to the children in the neighborhood. Kathy, to give the invocation.
Will you bow your heads, please? Dear Heavenly Father, we are so thankful for the freedoms that we have here in this nation. We thank you for the right to pursue happiness. We thank you for the access to education, and we thank you for the many blessings that you give this nation. Lord, we come before you now and we ask that you would help us to have wisdom and discernment, and we listen to the speakers. Grant us, Lord, discernment as we think about the ideas and how to move them forward. Help us, Lord, to share our talents and our resources with others, our community and our neighborhoods. Help us to serve our communities, to love our neighbors. We ask that you'd help us to break down the walls that divide us. Help us to step outside our comfort zone, outside of our professional lives, step outside the business walls that we know, and step outside the neighborhoods that we know, and cross a town and learn to love the neighbors that we maybe have never met before, not just the ones that are next door. Lord, we ask that you would bless our nation. We pray that you would bless our state, our city, and our neighborhoods. Bless the speakers tonight, their messages, and may it cause us all to go out into our neighborhoods and love one another. In Jesus' name, amen.
We have another very special guest with us this evening to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'll try to get the names right. Constantino Guerri came to the United States on September 9, 1981 as a Fulbright scholar to study at the University of Kansas. Mr. Guerri has held a number of teaching posts and is the executive director of VITA Ministry, which helps Spanish-speaking people assimilate into our community. And it just so happens that in May 2013, he became a U.S. citizen. So thank you. Will you please lead us?
Good evening. Would you please help me say the Pledge of Allegiance, first in English, and then, if you can, help me in Spanish too. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with and justice for all. Juro lealtad a la bandera de Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa, una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Gracias.
Thank you. Pedro Irigoyen was born in Havana, Cuba on May 11, 1948. At the age of 12 in 1961, he immigrated with his mother to the United States as political refugees. Weeks later, followed by his two younger sisters, ages 3 and 7, then followed by his father. He was raised in Topeka, and though he graduated from high school and began his college career at Kemper Military Academy in Boonville, Missouri, he ultimately graduated from Washburn and then Washburn Law School. As an attorney in private practice, he is an ardent advocate for clients in such areas as civil rights, medical malpractice, constitutional law, regulatory law, and criminal law. For some 30 years, he has been the chairman of the Topeka Bar Association's Naturalization Committee, helping thousands of new American citizens be sworn in. Ladies and gentlemen, Pedro.
Good evening. Good evening. It's wonderful to see so many friends, so many people that I care so much about here today. In the winter of 1962, my mother, who was a PhD pharmacist, that's how we ended up here in Topeka, she was given employment at the Kansas Neurological Institute. My mother and father took my sisters and me to the Capitol building. It was a cold winter afternoon. We were young refugees, having lost our country because of political irresponsibility. My mother and father took us to the Senate and the House, and then to the Supreme Court. And I clearly remember them saying to us, in this building, the laws are made and the laws are enforced. We have no other place to run to. That was our reality. We ran away from dictatorship. We ran away from tyranny. And I chose to become a lawyer because I didn't want to run anymore. Thank you. I appreciate what Roar does a great deal. But seriously, Cal Thomas? Cal Thomas believes that gay marriage is a sign of the end times. I disagree. Cal Thomas has said the following: public schools are the enemies of re-education camps, re-education camps. Evolution will kill seniors and people with disabilities. Don't put your children in the enemy's re-education camps where they are taught they evolved from slime and their nearest relative is down at the zoo and that's why they like bananas on their cereal and where they don't learn the real history of America. Cal Thomas, really? That's who they have on their book section. I suggest to you that a better choice might, oh, and by the way, Cal Thomas' book has a foreword by Sean Hannity. I suggest to you, Why Not America? By my favorite, Jon Stewart. At least put both of them up so that we can have a more balanced approach. The reason I specifically chose the issue of education is because without a good public education system, our youth is doomed to failure. We must look at public education as the civil rights issue in our state today. Teachers are not our enemies. They are our friends. They are my heroes. For without them, we would not be able to articulate our thoughts. We would not be able to express to one another intelligently how we feel about particular issues. We would be doomed to ignorance. We should celebrate teachers, not constantly attack them. I urge you to take a look at a website called Kansas Families for Public Education. The $51 million cut in March of public education in Kansas is indicative of the type of attitude towards public education that Cal Thomas has so clearly expressed. I think we deserve better. I know we deserve better. A good public education is good for us. An uneducated populace is not a family value. Those of us that believe in equality for all, whether one is gay, lesbian, or transgender, whether one is black, Hispanic, Muslim, Jew, Hindu, our nation must embrace everyone with equal dignity, with equal respect. I hear the Pledge of Allegiance under God, and I ask myself, what God? What God are we talking about? If one is Hindu and one is an American citizen, is one's faith less valuable than a Christian? Is a Muslim less valuable in his faith than a Christian or a Jew? As the chairman of the Naturalization Committee, I have seen thousands of new American citizens be sworn in a room similar to this, where we have people from Israel, Germany, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, England, all over the world together, coming to America because we represent the best in the world. Although there's a lot of things in this country that can be better, because African Americans still not treated equally. Look what just happened in Baltimore, where a man doing absolutely nothing wrong is illegally arrested, brutalized, suffers a fatal cervical spine injury, and dies for no other reason than being black. We're better than that. We are better than that. We are denying in this state gay, lesbian people the right to marry. We allow a lesbian and a homosexual man to marry. That's okay. But not people that love each other, that want to live with dignity, with the same rights as each and everyone else. Why? What have they done to us that are heterosexual? Why are they less than we? I suggest we're making a terrible mistake, and history will judge us as having been wrong. And finally, I'd like to address with you for just a moment an issue that is also very disturbing to me, and that is gun violence in America. The NRA, which everyone seems to be afraid of, particularly elected officials, is supported to the tune since 2005 with over $38.5 million by gun manufacturers. Gun manufacturers. And the amount may be much higher because they do not release their donors list. In fact, they have set up shadow organizations, not unlike Big Tobacco with smokers' rights. You remember that? Or polluters who set up attacks on legitimate science and earth warming. Firearm deaths are now at an epidemic level. Over 33,000 Americans die every year from firearms, and over 80,000 are injured. Gun violence in America today cost us, in total dollars, $229 billion a year. But fortunately, we just passed a law in Kansas that in July, you can carry a concealed weapon without even getting a permit. Does that make any sense? No. My dear friends, there's a lot to be proud to be an American. But I suggest to you that the best thing about being an American is the right to stand up and speak truth to power. Without fear. Without fear. So, to roar, we like to roar with you. But let's roar with equality for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Our next speaker, who gets the honor of following that, which should be relatively easy, Gary Cushenberry. He's an award-winning community relations professional, been employed with Core First Bank and Trust for the last 28 years. The father of 2 daughters and 3 granddaughters, Gary has served on over 40 boards in his career and has been honored by the Topeka Human Relations Commissions for service in Topeka in combating discrimination and prejudice by advancing diversity issues with unwavering commitment and class. He also enjoys outdoor activities, hunting, fishing, biking, and I think several others. I've known Gary longer than either one will admit. But Gary Cushenberry.
Thank you, Greg. And I agree. Gosh, Pedro is always a tough act to follow. Always has good stuff. And I have to tell you, Pedro was one of my dad's favorites. Even before I knew Pedro, him and my dad were pals. So thank you for being a friend of my father's. Prior to me getting started, another friend on front row, Vernon McFalls, leaned over and whispered to me. He asked me, why do we fear each other? Just that question just kind of resonating in my head. Why do we fear each other? And maybe it just seems like it's easier to fear each other than it is to sit down and have some open dialogue with each other. And that wasn't going to be my topic. But thank you, Vernon, for throwing me, Vern McFalls for throwing me a curveball. I stand here on the shoulders of several people, one in particular, my father, Grant Cushenberry. lady talk up? And it's probably me swaying away from the mic. So. Okay. Well, I hate standing behind a podium, but that was a lesson that I learned. That was one of the lessons that I've learned is how much we are alike. I would see, and still today, the kids hate going to the grocery store with me. They hate going anywhere with me unless I'm spending money on them. But when I go someplace, if I see somebody, if I make eye contact with somebody, we're all sharing the same space. We're all, my dad's favorite line was, we're all just folks. We're all just folks. And so if I get an opportunity to see you along the way, I don't know how many times I'm going to pass this way, but at this moment, you're the most important person that I know is the person that I'm going to hopefully have a conversation with. I terrify the kids when we get on the elevator because they know I'm going to engage somebody on the elevator. And they just pull my coat and say, "Dad, leave people alone." I said, "Well, I'm not bothering anybody. I'm not bothering anybody." Gosh, I had several things I was going to talk about, but one of the main things that I just wanted to address is civic engagement. Like I say, I learned that at an early age. I'd watch Dad. Dad had 3 jobs. He worked from the VA hospital from 11 to 7 at night. Get off at 7, come home, eat some breakfast, get everybody else up. We'd jump on the trash truck and we'd pick up trash from 12 to noon, eat. Dad was real big about eating. He knew that if you're hungry, you can't work. And so he was real good about feeding you. So we would eat, get through with trash, then we'd break out to push mowers. And then we would cut grass. We'd cut grass all afternoon. Then about 4 or 5, we'd quit that. Then we'd go to ball practice. And he would coach all our ball teams. And I was thinking, never thought about it. I just thought that's what all dads did. And then about 7 o'clock, he'd lay down for 2 or 3 hours and then back up doing that same grind. And it was a tremendous, tremendous life lesson for me, especially as I became a parent myself. There were many mornings that I didn't want to get up and go to work, but you do the things that you have to do. The other thing, like I say, I'm here standing on the shoulders of my father. The things I've done or do are pale in comparison, in hindsight, of the things that he's done over his lifetime. We used to do watermelon feeds. We would go around to a lot of the 501 schools in the area, and school would get out of class about 15 minutes early, and Dad and the crew would be out back cutting watermelons, and all the kids would just love the watermelons. I used to love watermelons too, except I was the one that had to fill the doggone truck up with all those doggone watermelons, and so the watermelons kind of took on a different meaning for me. When I see watermelon, it was work to me. So, but nonetheless, Dad, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to bring watermelons to the school. Dad also was one of the co-founders of the Thanksgiving dinner. Saw a need, felt that he could make a difference. I remember seeing him. I'd come in, he'd be sitting in his recliner with his eyes closed, and I'd try to sneak by him, and he'd say, "What you doing?" Another valuable lesson I learned, another line of his was, "Every closed eye isn't sleep. Just because my eyes are closed doesn't mean I'm asleep." And I learned that at an early age, so I learned to wait until I seen his head bob. Then I knew. Then I could sneak by him. But prior to that, if I walked by him, he would wake up and tell me obviously I had something to do. As Dad aged and matured, what I learned, let me backtrack. What I learned, the power of one. He'd come up with these ideals, and I'd say, "Well, Dad, how are you going to do that? We don't have money to do that." And he said, "Oh, he's not worried about money." Dad never worried about money because he always had friends. He could reach out to the Pedros. He could reach out to the John Carlins. And just ask him. "Hey, I kind of got this idea. What do you think about it?" And before long, one thing would snowball, and 300 kids would be at the Arab Shrine Circus. 1,000 people were getting fed at the Expo Center. And that just all came from the power of one, just one person sitting down saying, I can make a difference. And so I guess in closing, I just want folks to know that one person can make a difference. We've come from the we generation. As I look around the room, the demographics of this room is the we. We all know about the we. We went from the we society to the me society. I never get so sick of seeing people with taking selfies. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get why people think somebody wants to see a picture of them all the time. But maybe that's just me. But in closing, another quote this quote is by Maya Angelou, and Dad would never said this, but if he was around, if he heard it, I know this would ring true with him. And the quote goes, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better." And just a pretty simple, and those words are the words I want to leave you with. We all can do better. We all can reach back and help somebody. There's a new thing that's going on, and it's probably not new. It's called paying it forward. I've been several places, either on the turnpike or at a restaurant, and they'll say, "Oh, well, so-and-so paid for your meal." I said, "But I got money. What do you mean?" I said, "Well, no, they just paid for your meal." And so I just felt that, okay, well, here's my money, you pay for the next person. And I just think if that's something that we could do as a society, if we could start paying forward, because I think we truly, it's not that I think, I know we live in the best country in the world. And the only way this country is going to stay strong and stay the best is all of us. It's all of us. It's all the things that we do, and it's the power of we. It's not me, it's we. The more of us that get behind things and do things and move forward, the better place, the better world it's going to be, and the better community it's going to be. So thank you. Like I say, it was a tough act following Pedro, but thank you for allowing me to share some insight.
Thank you, Gary. Our next speaker is Melissa Jarboe. Melissa is the CEO of the Military Veteran Project, founder of the Topeka Veterans Parade, and on the Military Council for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. She's a Kansas native who chose to resign from the corporate world after her husband, Staff Sergeant Jamie Jarboe, was wounded in combat, and dedicate herself to carrying on her husband's dying wish to care for his fellow service members. Please welcome Melissa Jarboe.
So I had two hard acts to follow. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I want to give thanks to God, who each day I put first in my life, and I follow the path I was created for. Second, I would like to ask if we're in the presence of any veterans this evening. If we are, could you please stand so we could acknowledge you? Okay, that might make me cry. Thank you for fighting for the freedoms we're going to use tonight. If it wasn't for you men and women in this room, I wouldn't be here. Neither would any of us right now. We are a grateful nation and are forever indebted to you and your family for your service. Thank you to the Renaissance of American Responsibility, otherwise known as RAR. I was going to try to do it really strong, but that didn't work. Thank you for welcoming me as a guest speaker this evening and to Morris Communications. What I'm going to share with you tonight is how I took my freedom for granted. For the first 30 years of my life, I never thought twice about what the true cost of freedom was. I never understood how much I took advantage of my freedom until I answered the phone on the morning of April 10th, 2011. An unfamiliar voice asked to speak with Melissa Jarboe, and they told me the following: "Ma'am, I'm going to read this script to you verbatim. I do not have any answers to your questions." And on the 10th day of April 2011, 4th Cavalry, 4th Regiment Able Troop was on patrol in the Zari district of Afghanistan when Able Troop took enemy fire, resulting in one casualty of Sergeant Jamie Darrell Jarboe, who was wounded by that enemy fire. Please write down this number for further information. Hours later, I would be told my husband was shot by a sniper's bullet. A 7.62 bullet from an AK-47 rifle penetrated my husband's spine, leaving him paralyzed from the chest down. Jamie was transferred to Kandahar in Afghanistan and then Landstuhl, Germany, and finally to Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C., where I was able to be bedside to him 5 minutes after he arrived. We spent the next 11 months inside 7 different hospitals. Jamie was not able to walk, talk, breathe, or eat, and he endured 100 surgeries and surgical procedures. We tried to heal what the sniper so viciously tore apart physically to my husband and emotionally to our entire family. Our family spent the summer inside an ICU room that was 8 by 10 foot wide. For Halloween, my girls went trick-or-treating at the nurse's station. For Thanksgiving, we ate leftovers from another family because we did not want to leave. And on Christmas, we slept on the floor next to my husband's hospital bed so we could wake up together on Christmas Day. Each day, we would wake up praying that we were one step closer to going home to enjoy the freedoms we took for granted for so many years. When we wouldn't give what we wouldn't give to go out to our favorite restaurant and get the wrong meal. We missed being cut off in traffic by those erratic drivers. We missed walking to our mailbox and getting junk mail, the simple pleasures of our American life. We created new daily habits. Like as a family, my daughters would help me move my husband's legs so he wouldn't get blood clots. My daughters, they would help me move him from side to side so he wouldn't get more bed sores. We would gather around his hospital bed in our cold metal chairs just to see him open his eyes, so he knew that his family was beside him, loving and missing him so much. It was the fight inside of us, the love for our country, and fellow service members that kept our dream of one day coming home to Kansas alive. We made it to Kansas, but on March 10th, 2012, our dream was shattered. Doctors relayed the information to my husband and I that he was terminal and needed to be placed in hospice care for the remaining of his life. I can remember the last few days when the nurses would come in. Jamie would kind of taunt them and say, "Ask me anything you want. Ask me now." And one nurse actually asked Jamie if he regretted his service to his country. And Jamie smiled at her, and he said, "I have no regrets. I love the military, I love my country, my fellow American, and I would take that bullet again." Jamie and I were able to hold on to one another and embrace the hardships we had endured for the last 11 months of fighting for his life. We embraced the reality of the true cost of freedom. Jamie asked me to get a pen and paper to write down what he was about to tell me. He said, "We might as well use the rest of my life to help plan the rest of yours." The first thing he told me to write down was, "I love you, and don't ever forget that." The second, keep helping my soldiers and their families. Take care of them, and don't ever let them forget they have our unconditional support. Last but not least, I want you to fall in love again, because you are too beautiful of a woman to become bitter or tainted by all of this that has happened. I can remember laying on his hospital bed and the nurse telling me that I had to ask him if he wanted me to let him go. When I finally came up the nerve to ask Jamie, he shook his head yes. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes as I asked him if he knows how much everyone is going to miss him. He shook his head yes. I told him I will promise to do everything he told me to do, and I know he has struggled more than humanly possible. I gave him one last kiss, and at 9:25 a.m. on March 21st, 2012, my husband took his last and final breath of freedom. Today, 3 years after Jamie's passing, I can say I have kept true to all his promises. He asked me to do. Year to date, we have created a military nonprofit called the Military Veteran Project and have assisted over 6,000 veterans, families of the fallen and military families with reintegration and rehabilitation through program support and medical treatment. Mind you, no one in this nonprofit has ever received a paycheck. We have thousands of volunteers nation and worldwide at this time. With the efforts of the volunteers, we were able to create the first ever Veterans Parade here in Topeka, Kansas back in 2013. You can join us this year, Saturday, November 7th, 2015 at 11 a.m. If you surround the Capitol to give thanks and tribute to our veterans, we would be happy to have you. With the assistance of our team and volunteers, we have created programs called the Ride for the Fallen to assist soldiers dealing with survivor's guilt. They participate in this event and ride in honor of heroes or fellow friends who have given the ultimate sacrifice. You can join us at the Topeka Veterans Administration Hospital Saturday, May 23rd at 8 a.m. for breakfast and personally thank the veterans there for their service as well. You can help create change and become a leader in your community by putting your actions in motion. And leading by example is all you have to do. These programs help me heal and help me become a better American. Each day I strive to create change in the world by using my freedoms. I learned that I was not doing enough each day when I would go to my office. I tried and thought I was living the American dream, but I was not realizing that in a moment's notice I would be taught the cost of freedom is not free. It comes with a very high cost, and that's a human life. If my husband can give his life for our country, then I can live for him each day, carrying on his dying wish to care for his fellow service members, and you're welcome to help me. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Our next speaker is Roger Eckelman. Roger's worked at least 2 jobs his entire adult life, currently as a vice president and trust officer at Core First Bank and Trust. He's an officer in the National Guard and a freelance writer. In his free time, he serves with the Topeka Rotary Foundation, the Topeka Jayhawk Council Boy Scouts of America, and many other civic and military associations, including a term as president of a local board of education. He volunteered for combat tours in Iraq and Kosovo and was awarded the Bronze Star. Ladies and gentlemen, Roger.
All right. Well, Melissa just introduced the military heroes of our Constitution, these heroes of our Bill of Rights, the heroes of our civil society. You stood. Warriors and comrades in arms, we thank you for your presence here tonight and your service. These heroes that were standing are the guarantors of our civil liberties and the U.S. Bill of Rights. The United States government does not grant our God-given civil rights. The United States government does a pretty poor job of protecting them. And all too often, the United States government is the primary antagonist of our liberties and freedoms. It is because of the military heroes out here today and all those preceding them that we can exercise our First Amendment right to peaceably assemble here this evening. It is they, our military heroes, who guarantee the freedom of the press, the freedom of religion, the freedom to petition for the redress of our grievances, the freedom to be secure in our homes, the freedom to be secure in ownership of our personal property. During World War II, more than 16 million Americans were in uniform, more than 10% of the U.S. population. That meant every American had a relative at war. Every American knew a service member by name. Back then, every American personally knew to whom they owed their liberties. Compared today, only 1 out of 300 Americans is in the service. 50% of Americans today cannot name one person in uniform. by name. We are disconnected from the very people who make our daily lives possible. In World War II, 2/3 of the military were drafted into service. Compare today, 100% of service members are volunteers. They have chosen to put themselves into harm's way for us. When 299 million Americans looked the other way, these heroes stepped forward and said, "Here am I, send me." Since 1973, every volunteer raised their hands and they swore, "I do solemnly swear I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God." Let's parse that, shall we? I do solemnly swear. This is an oath. This is a promise to you. I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. This oath is first and foremost a pledge to defend the Constitution of the United States. Not the ruler of the United States, not the citizens, not the coastline. The Constitution is to whom we swear our oath of allegiance. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic, recognizing that internal threats to the Constitution are every bit as great as external threats. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that no matter what happens or who is in charge, I will continue to support and defend the Constitution. And that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the officers appointed over me, recognizing the President is the civilian commander-in-chief of all of our military services. We obey his orders as long as they do not contradict the Constitution, according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That's thousands of pages of military laws and rules that must be upheld, including the awesome requirement that military personnel must disobey illegal and unlawful, unconstitutional orders, even if they come from the President. And so help me God, recognizing there is a higher authority here than any human being. If we compare this oath of office, this oath of service, to the military of any other nation, which are almost all conscripted, whose military is created first and foremost to secure the power of their president or their king or their prime minister, whose military is often a tool of patronage intended to suck the wealth and resistance out of the population, it is no wonder our U.S. military services are ranked among the most respected institutions in the entire world. Your service members have written each one of you a blank check reading, "I will pay any amount up to and including my life." Why would they do this? In part, it must be because they have seen the world and they know how truly remarkable America is. If you've traveled the world and seen how miserable and pathetic places can be, you know this is true. Half the people on earth are still without clean running water, without functional sewage systems, without reliable electricity or any modern healthcare services whatsoever. Your service members believe in American exceptionalism because they have seen the proof. We live in a blessed nation, the greatest nation in the history of the world. Service members know this to be true. America is blessed with a vast landmass. Only China and Russia have anything comparable to that. America is blessed with a tremendous percentage of productive agricultural land, far exceeding any other landmass. We are blessed with fresh water and natural and mineral resources. We're blessed with a growing and vibrant population with a high level of literacy, numeracy, and a true appreciation for the gift of education. We are blessed with a belief and an ethic that hard work is its own reward, but that it also pays off in the end. We are blessed with an understanding of deferred gratification and self-discipline. We are blessed with an unprecedented level of true individual freedom and liberty. We are blessed with the most amazing constitutional representative government ever, and blessed with a shared and thriving set of moral values. Not identical, not precisely the same, but shared. There has never been a nation like the United States of America before on this planet, and because of those reasons, there never will be again. And we owe it all to our military veterans. There are some who say America is not exceptional, that America is in a downward spiral, that America is the most hated nation in the world. These people are wrong. I have had the opportunity for a year-long tax-free, all-expenses-paid vacation to the cradle of civilization, and I assure you, every Iraqi would give up their firstborn children to trade places with you right now. I very recently returned from another year-long tax-free, all-expenses-paid vacation in the Balkans, the historical cauldron of European conflict. Every Kosovar, every Bosnian, every Albanian, every Macedonian, every Serb would cut off an arm just for the chance to enjoy our freedoms, the chance to live our peaceful way of life, the chance to work hard and to be rewarded, the chance to live where a government won't take everything you have. Folks, we've got it made in the USA thanks to our Constitution and the military who uphold it and defend it past, present, and future. I'd like to do one final thought. Our World War II veterans came home to parades. More recently, our post-9/11 service members came home to geysers of goodwill and well-wishing. Yet in between, our heroes from Korea came home ignored. Our heroes from Vietnam came home to indifference at best and at worst to outright abuse. So, help me. If you're a veteran of service in Korea or Vietnam, will you please stand up? Folks, on behalf, no, you're interrupting. Thank you. If you want to come to the American Legion State Conference on Saturday the 16th here in Topeka, I'll be doing a presentation called America Won. The United States won the wars in Korea and Vietnam. And you did. I hope I can document that. So to those veterans who just stood up, Korea and Vietnam, I'd like to say, on behalf of all of those who should have known better, I apologize for the way you were treated. And on behalf, finally, of a finally grateful nation, please accept our thanks for a magnificent job well done.
Thank you, Roger. Our keynote speaker tonight is known to many of us. A 33-year journalist, author, and speaker, Michael Ryan spent 19 years at the Topeka Capital-Journal as a reporter and editorial page editor before taking the same position in 2002 at the Augusta Chronicle, the flagship paper of the Capital-Journal's parent company. Michael is also executive director of Morris Communications' civic initiative called ROAR, Renaissance of American Responsibility. He's the author of The Last Freedom, a novel on Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl, as well as author of the pocket-sized book, What You Can Do for Your Country, both of which are available here tonight. With that, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Ryan.
I'm just glad you got my name right. Thank you very much. Mike or Michael does well. Thank you all for being here tonight. What speeches, huh? That's a tough act to follow. I've known Roger for over 30 years, and I've tried like the Dickens to make him cry. I tried everything in my writing to make him cry, and it never worked. That was quite a display, Roger. Thank you so much. Gary, I don't know if you remember this or not, but when we were at Washburn, we had an assignment to do play-by-play of a basketball game on tape for a class. Boy, I was awful. I don't know about you, but we were awful. Melissa, I don't know how tall you are, but you stand tallest in this room tonight, let me tell you. And Pedro, what can be said about Pedro Aragonagaray that he hasn't said already? Pedro, we are very different people, you and I. One is a minority, an Irish guy. The other's a lawyer. We believe very different things, but at the end of the day, we love each other like brothers. And I think that represents the best of America, don't you? All right. I'm going to apologize a little bit because I'm a little under the weather. I was spending a few days with some family in Kansas City and got some really bad pet allergies. And so I'm a little bit under the weather, but I made it to the Capitol Plaza Hotel just in time for the dog show. So that was quite a relief. Nothing to sneeze at either. You know, Pedro, many years ago, gave me the great honor of speaking at a naturalization ceremony, and it's something I've done several times since. And it is an incredible experience. I had a little bit of fun with it, though. I ticked down the top 10 things that make America great, and obviously I had a little bit of fun with that, such as pizza in 30 minutes or it's free. You could actually spell our tennis players' names. And this was the Clinton era, so I said a news media that takes an active interest in your love life. But after every one of those, I commanded the crowd of all these different faces and voices to chant with me, "Is this a great country or what?" And I heard that in every accent possible. What a great moment that was in my life. I know this is a great country simply because of the barbecue. And having immigrated a few years ago to the South, I can tell you this is barbecue country. I was honored to go to Brazil through Rotary a number of years ago, and I spent a long time there. And when I got back to KCI, I ordered my wife to take me directly to a barbecue joint. I forgot that we had kids, and I think we had a police escort because I saw some flashing lights in the rearview mirror. I told people around the country now that this area of the country takes barbecue so seriously. Our baby formula comes in mild, medium, and hot. That's serious barbecue. But you know, this area gets very little respect in Hollywood. Kansas in particular is often pilloried in film. You look at The Wizard of Oz, the Kansas scenes were filmed in black and white. You look at Christmas Vacation, I don't know if you remember this, but crazy Cousin Eddie was from Kansas. Thank you very much. And in the Bond film Diamonds Are Forever, Blofeld is describing his scheme to James Bond, and he's planning on destroying something with this diamond-studded satellite. And he says, you know, I could blow up Kansas, but nobody would notice for 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Well, they didn't target Kansas, maybe for that reason on 9/11, but I want to tell you just a minute about my 9/11 experience. I was working here at the Capitol Journal, and I pulled into work having listened to NPR's report of a plane hitting a building in New York City. And I didn't think very much of it. I visualized a Cessna, and I got in, obviously it was quite different than that. And within a few hours, I was tasked with trying to make sense of it for an early afternoon edition and to write an editorial about it. It was very therapeutic for me to do that, but the lid came off that night, and I had some time to reflect and feel. And like many of y'all, yes, I say y'all. I've been in Georgia for 12 years now. Sometimes I say all y'all. But like all y'all, I went to church and I fought back tears that night, and I spent an uncertain number of weeks and months with an awful feeling in the pit of my stomach, not knowing what was going to happen next, feeling awful for what happened to my country. But I tell you that just to tell you this. In all of that time, in the weeks and months and even years after 9/11, it never once occurred to me that this country could end. I can't say that today. I fear for my country. Let me tell you why. Number one, we are spending our children into oblivion. We are leaving them a tab for our comfort that they may never be able to pay back. We are actually less free than we used to be. An organization called Reporters Without Borders ranks us 46th in the world in press freedom, the home of the First Amendment. We're also ranked around 12th economically in terms of freedom. We've seen so many divisions, and particularly in the last few years in this country, along lines of race, gender, party, class. And maybe worst of all, we have a great population in this country that is unfamiliar with our system of government. And that's not a matter of opinion. In civics and history tests a few years ago, American high school students showed that they were totally out to lunch. 75 to 80% were insufficient in civics and history. Folks, we're not doing much better in adulthood either. In a civics test administered to the public a few years ago, 71% of us got an F. It's pretty bad. And you know, we don't even know what kind of country we want to be anymore. A recent poll indicated, when asked whether government should help spread the wealth around, approximately 68% of Democrats said yes, 68% of Republicans said no. We don't even know what kind of country we want to be. I was reminded of a quote in Braveheart, the movie, historical Scottish movie, and one character says to another, "This country has no sense of itself." I wonder if we're falling into that same trap. You know, the thing that holds America together is not ethnicity, as so many countries around the world, and you know that. What holds us together is a system of ideas and ideals that we share, that we agree to. We have a covenant called the Constitution. But what happens when we don't agree on those very basic ideas and ideals? Or if we don't know how the system even works? Meanwhile, it's become fashionable to bash America gratuitously. Pointing out our flaws is not bashing America. It's hoping for the best. But in some sectors, it has become fashionable to bash our imperfections, and we have many. We even bash our wholesomeness. You know, when people say, "You're such a Boy Scout," they don't mean it as a compliment anymore. And I think that's sad. And I think Roger talked a little bit about American exceptionalism. And I think there's a big misunderstanding about that. American exceptionalism isn't pride in your country. Just about any country in the world exhibits pride in itself. And you know, truthfully, pride is something that really flows from individuals, and it's often vain and inaccurate. American exceptionalism is different than that. It's more than that. It flows from America itself. It's about our system of self-governance, our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, and our other founding documents. And I think the blessings of providence. The founders said that our rights come from God and no man can take them away. So for me, American exceptionalism is about respect for the sovereignty of the individual. That's not pride, but it's something to be proud about. And yet we run around acting as if American exceptionalism runs in our DNA. We're not born better. We're just born free. But sovereignty also comes with responsibility. It means accepting a simple but awesome obligation of citizenship. We need to be informed. We need to know our beliefs. We need to act on those beliefs. We need to be familiar with the issues and the candidates. And we need to vote. But then after we vote, we need to hold our elected officials accountable. If they don't do their jobs, let's at least do ours. And remember, no one has sovereignty over you. Not a government and not another human being. Well, unless you're a guy who's married. We accept that willingly. Sovereignty doesn't mean that you get your way either. It means you're allowed to make your way. So let me ask you, does a sovereign individual stay at home on election day? Does a sovereign individual let someone else decide what's best? We got some sovereign individuals in here. I have kind of a radical belief about sovereignty. I believe that all 7 billion people on this planet are sovereign individuals. The difference is we just happen to live in one of the few countries in history that respects that. If your country doesn't respect it, it's not your problem, it's the country's. And you need to change that. And I think that's pretty exceptional. But again, while flaunting our rights, we need to remember they come with responsibilities. I ask you how we're doing on that. You remember I talked about our knowledge of civics and history. And we're letting our leaders steal from our children's future paychecks to buy our comfort today. You know, that's not all their fault either. It's ours too. But guess what? Our votes, our children, and our country are not for sale. My friends, we're at a crossroads in our lives and in this country. We can sit back and let someone else set the course for this country, or we can act like the sovereign individuals we are. Freedom isn't a spectator sport. We need to get in the game. I ask you to be the best citizen you can be, the best friend, the best relative, the best neighbor. I ask you to vote, join a civic club, engage your friends in the issues, but engage them civilly. By all means, though, be engaged. Fight for what you believe in. We all have private lives in this country, and we've indulged them pretty well. You just have to check our waistlines, especially in the barbecue belt. But we need to feed our public lives too. Give your country the nourishment of your attention. You know, it's paradoxical that the United States of America is the strongest nation in history, and yet so very vulnerable. We're vulnerable because we're not tied together again by ethnicity. We're tied together through ideas and ideals. And if we don't agree on those, we're in trouble. We don't have to agree on everything, but on the very basics, on the foundational aspects of this country, we need to get together on. For me, the 3 legs of the American stool are character, brotherhood, and citizenship. I think we need to bring back the spirit of JFK, who asked us, yes, please. He told us to ask not what our country can do for us, but ask what we can do for our country. Meanwhile, our forefathers risked everything, to bring forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty. And they pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. You know, their challenges and their risks were infinitely greater than ours. Ours is not so tall a task. Surely, we can pledge the same to each other. I want to close by quoting Revolutionary War hero Joseph Warren, who told his comrades in the heat of the Revolutionary War, quote, "On you depend the fortunes of America. You are to decide the important question on which rests the happiness and liberty of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves." I ask you tonight, and I know I'm preaching to a big choir, go forth and act worthy of yourselves. Thank you so much. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you, Michael. We're nearing the end. What do y'all think of the speakers tonight? Good stuff? Varying aspects. I thought it was all great. Hope we've had a little fun. Hopefully you're inspired. I trust that we've given you not just hope, but excitement for America's future. As we leave you tonight, we're going to have the singing of God Bless America, led by Dr. Grace Morrison. Dr. Morrison served our community as an OB/GYN and in retirement serves on the board of directors of the Rotary Club of Topeka and the Topeka Community Foundation. She has recently starred at the Topeka Civic Theater and regularly sings in public and private events in the area. And she will be accompanied by Marjorie Okonski. I think I got two names right out of the evening, so it was good. With that, Dr. Morrison.
What an incredible event this has been tonight. We've heard so many things. We've heard about the power of one, the power of we. We've heard about the things we need to improve, and we have heard about the responsibility that we all have to keep our country great and keep it going in the right direction. And I told Michael just before we started tonight that I really applaud him for leading this charge. And I told him that I thought we should have an event just like this every day in every town throughout our great country. So it's my pleasure tonight to lead us all in God Bless America, and I will sing the first verse and then bring you in on the chorus, and we'll repeat a portion of the chorus. Where the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, mountains, to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Thank you all.
Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to stop by and be with us this evening. Go forth. Hopefully the rains come, but no storms. And God bless America and this great country we live in. Yeah. Thank you.